what is the defining thing of the N64? And whether you talk about a game, right? Like No Mercy, Goldeneye, Mario Party, Smash, it's not just about the game. It's the fact that, as we mentioned in earlier episodes, it's got freaking 4 controller ports, and I don't think that gets talked about enough because I do think that's the biggest thing that left it. And I also think that's why so many people are nostalgic for the console, because it's the console that you and I and probably 2 other friends play growing up, as opposed to something like the PS1, which I'm super nostalgic for. But to me, the PS1 was a lonely console for me because I was an RPG gamer, right? So I didn't care about multiplayer stuff, but here it was the complete opposite. So when talking about the console and multiplayer, why do you think that is so significant? And when talking about its just history?
It's not only that it had the 4 controller ports, but it had the games to back it up, right? If we didn't have those same games, then it wouldn't be talked about. But they just came out with one banger after next. We had, of course, Mario Kart and Diddy Kong Racing, both as incredible racing games. But I think the ultimate game changer really was GoldenEye 007, that just basically popularized the console FPS multiplayer, which wasn't really a thing at the time until this game really made it work. Where, you know, a lot of times you just see a PC like Doom or like Duke Nukem game, but GoldenEye 007 really, you know, it doesn't hold up well today, but it really paved the way for eventually a game like Halo that took it to new heights.
The games really are what made it just that little bit more special, because like the PS1 had a multi-tap. You could use 4 controllers on a PS1, but there just weren't games that were there for it that
if you played
you really
PS1
wanted to.
With more than 2 people at once, that's considered like a miracle, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, pretty much. And you found something that was fun enough to play with 4 people and keep their attention, because yes, I get that the N64 had the advantage of not having that be an accessory, and there was 4 ports plugged in, and it was all universal. So like as a kid, I could just grab my controller and go to my friend's house, and boom, all of a sudden we have like 3 people doing the same thing. We've got a 4-player game going. But when we were able to play stuff like Super Smash Brothers, like GoldenEye, like Ryan said, like Mario Kart, like that's the thing that really just took it to that next level, right? There's just so many. You could make a top 10 multiplayer games list on the N64, and no matter what you choose, you would have one that's missing from the list, right? There is just such a deep library of great multiplayer games on that system that there was just something for everybody if you owned it. And really, like, that was the seller, because if you look at single player experiences on the N64, there's, with like 1 or 2 exceptions that were made by Nintendo, there's just something about how they don't hang quite as well, and it really is like the perfect multiplayer system.
And I think it goes to what Ryan said, where having those 4 ports by default, kind of like the GameCube, right? If you think about Nintendo, maybe I think the Wii U's, when they kind of broke off, every console, the gimmick was a main feature, right? The multi-tap for the PS1.
Even with the GameCube, the games weren't there on that same level, right? Like, even though...
Except for Melee. They just had Melee. That was it.
I mean, hey, that's a showstopper in itself.
Yeah. Exactly, but it had a little bit, but it's like, even when you go, and I know we'll eventually talk about the Wii, the wiggle motion, like the motion controls were the feature, right? Imagine if you had 2 versions of the N64, one that was like budget price with 2 ports versus 4 ports. It's like, imagine how different the games would have been designed. Imagine Smash designed with 2-player in mind. And then Ryan, you mentioned something. It's like, I think GoldenEye, even though some people call it overrated, I actually think it is underrated. And the thing is, we talk about it from the first-person shooter perspective, right? But think about this. You have first-person shooter, and then you have the actual like game based on a movie that works. but it's also 4-player multiplayer. It's like those three things are significant on their own. And it's one game that's giving you all three things. Like, I guarantee you, not
Plus
only
the
was
cheats, all that, like,
and
it was
yeah.
on top of all that, they added all these different modes and stuff to make it just fun. It's really, yeah, it's an incredible game. Absolutely.
Exactly.
One game I want to talk about that I just think it doesn't get talked about as much in the multiplayer space, but Conker's Bad Fur Day. This game is just like, it's similar to like how Resident Evil 2 on the N64 is like a miracle of game design. Conker's Bad Fur Day, I think, is another one of those kind of miracle of game design. The fact that you can fit full voice acting onto an N64 game on top of a great campaign mode that is pretty lengthy. And then you have this whole setup of multiplayer games where not only can you play with 4 people, but you can actually add additional computer players into your 4-player matchups. And you can set their AI from like really, really dumb to all the way up to what they called Einstein level was like the highest AI, where they're just like sniping you from a mile away. But it was just incredible what they were able to like pack into that game, and it was pretty late to the N64, so that's probably why it's not really remembered as much for its multiplayer. But that's just one of those games that was incredibly fun to play multiplayer. Like, me and my buddy would just play that game, and we'd play together versus a bunch of AI and try to win, and it was a really good time.
See, that's so fascinating because I never realized that Conker was a multiplayer game. Like, I thought it was just the crude single-player kind of miracle experience that showed up near the end of the N64's lifetime. And that's what I meant by, you can consider this one of the best multiplayer systems of all time and not be fully aware of just how good it actually is unless you've like experienced the entire library. That's so cool.
Yeah, I actually never played Conker, so I didn't know that it was like an actual good game because I just thought of it as like this naughty adult type game and
all
Nintendo
I know about
console.
that game is you fight a giant poo at some point, and that's about it.
That is it. That's honestly an incredible sequence that maybe we'll get more into later.
Yeah.
But I will say this about Conker's Bad Fur Day: it is a well-made game, but my God, are there some like really difficult, frustrating parts that will like make you want to punch a wall. Trust me, there's some really like BS parts that will just infuriate you.
And just like reacting to a couple of the multiplayer, the multiplayer haven of the Nintendo 64. So there's Mario Party, and there's 3 Mario Parties, right? Because 4 started on the GameCube, if I'm not mistaken. We got Mario Kart 64, Goldeneye, Smash, Mario Golf, there's Mario Tennis, Perfect Dark, Diddy Kong Racing, all the wrestling games except the bad ones. And then obviously Conker's Bad Fur Day. And as Keith mentioned, you can make a top 20 of multiplayer games, and at least 10 of them are like must plays. Hey, we really hope you enjoyed this podcast clip, and if you did, guess what? You can listen to the full episode right now by searching for Quest Rewind on your favorite podcast app, including Spotify. And while you're at it, follow us over there so you never miss a new episode.